Welcome back, Doug Pagitt Radio, 11:21, 21 minutes after the hour on January 3rd, 2010. Beginning of a new year, a new decade. A new period in the hopeful, optimistic world of religious radio. That's not quite right.
The new decade doesn't start till next year.
Yeah, some people suggest that.
No, it's actually true.
Well, not actually true. It's just a way in which someone measures a decade.
1 through 10 is a decade, and then 1 through 10 is the next decade.
Yes, but there's lots of ways that people can measure a decade. You can measure a decade from 2003 to 2013 or 12. yeah, you could measure it any 10-year clump that you want. Some of us can go from 0 to 9. Other people can go from 1 to 10, right? It's just because a decade just means 10 years, right?
Yes.
So any 10-year period is a decade.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. As long as we have that clear, because we dealt with this earlier in the show. Somebody
I bet you did.
in the chat room. Somebody in the chat room came in.
Tune in for the first couple minutes.
So you're always beginning a new decade. Every second you're beginning a new decade. That'll get you 10 years down the road. But we are we talk religion, and we talk news, and we talk topics, and we talk natural health. Shelley Pagitt, natural health coach, will be joining us here in a few minutes. Tony Jones, theologian, provocateur, practitioner of Christianity, is in. And then we got a call here during the break from Jim in Minneapolis, and Jim wants me to talk about why would somebody like me actually believe in God and the notion of God in this whole religious enterprise. So during the Right On segment, I will dive into that. But we're back with Tony Jones here. Tony Jones has put together some predictions for us of the 2010 realities in religion. And he said, number one, that there's going to be a high-profile evangelical folks, 4 to 6 of them, a handful plus one maybe, that are going to start to change their tune on their opposition to gay marriage. He also suggested that one of the leading advocates of evangelicalism in the country will lose cultural sway. A fellow named Rick Warren will become increasingly less influential because of some particular happenings going on across the board. So those are the two. We got 3 more, and we got to squeeze them all in to our next 6.5 minutes in this segment.
Well, and along with number 4, not only will Rick Warren wane, but I think that somebody will start to emerge as the next young leader. And I don't think it's going to be Franklin Graham. I think he doesn't have the chutzpah of his dad.
Okay.
I don't, it's not going to be Bob Schuller Jr.
So, and what you're talking about is who are the people that when the news people go to, who do they go to? So at Christmas time.
Who goes on Larry King Live?
On Meet the Press for a whole hour was Pastor Rick Warren, who was on the whole time. Who's on Larry King? Who's sort of the articulator of
and I don't think it's Joel Osteen.
Evangelicalism in America.
And the reason I don't think it's Joel Osteen is
who's going to get to pray at the inauguration?
Yeah.
These kinds of questions.
He's very influential in culture, but he doesn't say I'm an evangelical and I'm going to kind of set the tone for evangelicalism. So it'll be somebody younger, and that's number 4. Number 3, I think we're coming out of an era of 3 or 4 years when a hot theological topic among evangelicals has been the atonement and what happened on the cross with Jesus and how exactly does that save people.
So these internal arguments inside Christianity have focused on those topics.
And I think a rising topic among evangelicals we're going to see it in magazines like Christianity Today, we'll see it on influential blogs like Jesus Creed, is universalism. Can an evangelical be a universalist? And what does that mean? That doesn't mean all roads lead to heaven necessarily, but there's going to be a lot of, just like there was with the atonement, a lot of parsing out and careful theological discussion among evangelicals about is it possible to be an evangelical and be a universalist in general.
So for folks who don't run in the theological circles, for the guy in his kitchen making a little breakfast this morning, his new Sunday indulgent, he's never even thought about these categories of universalism. They don't even know what it is. The general notion of that idea is that the access to heaven granted by God through Jesus counts for everyone universally. It's like a universal adapter or a universal mount for your television. It fits on all of them. Can fit no matter what. Universal remote. The one covers them all.
Right.
Or are there some people that are going to find an eternal destiny in hell, some people in heaven, and that's parsed out by then each denomination or each religious tradition argues its own. So you're saying one of the things that evangelical type conservative Christians are going to start to talk about more fervently and more publicly is the viability of a universalism view of the salvation of all people to the promise of heaven someday.
Yeah. Yep. That's number 3.
And that's been a big bugaboo. That's been a big problem that's been one of the definers between people being more liberal Christian folks or being more conservative Christians. And you're saying that's going to stir up in the conservative camps in some whole new ways.
It's simply a reflection of the pluralistic world in which we live, and it's evangelicals continuing to grapple with other religions. Now here's number 2.
Number 2
is the least controversial of the 5. Number 2 is, I think the Pope will do virtually nothing or say virtually nothing at all controversial in 2010. I think Pope Benedict XVI will have a low profile in 2010. I don't think, in the past he said things about Islam that have been controversial, and he said things about whether he's called Catholicism the only true church, and the rest of us are just ecclesial communities, not really the church. I think the Pope will maintain a low profile. And interesting, he's in the news, of course, every year on Christmas Eve for the midnight mass, which, interestingly, you'll be interested as a pastor. I don't know if you know this, but he moved the time from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. for the start of the midnight mass this year.
Because he wanted to go for 2 hours?
I don't know. Maybe he was starting a second service, or he wanted an adult learning hour.
one of the early contemporary mass?
Yeah, might have been that. Maybe the musicians asked for a different time, or I don't know what it was. But interestingly, not only did they change the time, and that was in the news, but then, of course, he was attacked by a crazy lady.
He was knocked down by the 23-year-old woman.
She's 23.
Jumped the line.
Right?
Yeah, I read that this morning.
Wow.
25.
So he made the news, but he didn't do anything.
25-year-old.
He didn't do anything proactively controversial, and he didn't in 2009. And I think again in 2010 he won't do anything
controversial. You think the Pope's going to be laying low?
I think he's going to lay low.
Low-laying Pope.
I think he kind of learned his lesson after that. He couldn't weather the media storm with the same grace and charm that John Paul II did. So he got into a little hot water in a couple things, and I think his response was to retreat.
Okay.
And here's number 1.
All right, so number 1. So let's run them down. Evangelical folks, somebody's going to come out of the gay marriage thing. You're going to have a new rising evangelical star. Evangelicals are going to start to talk about the viability of universalism in more public ways. Number 4, the Pope is going to have a low profile.
And number 1.
The number 1 prediction by theologian, provocateur, and practitioner Tony Jones
2010
is,
I think that there will be a growing rift between Islam and the West, and you will not hear
there's a news bulletin.
No, but what I'm saying is, you know how American
2010
leaders,
or 2001?
No, look, American leaders, whether they be the president or religious leaders, say, look, we know Islam is a religion of peace, and there's been this kind of politically correct. I think you're going to hear less of that. I think you're going to hear more rhetoric against Islam.
A hardening against Islam.
By both American politicians and Christians, and they're going to quit trying to be politically correct when they refer to the religion of Islam.
Tony Jones making his predictions. Big news story. He suggests that things are going to become more acrimonious between religious people in the U.S. and Muslims around the world. Kind of hope it's not true, but it very well may be. Tony Jones is Doug Pagitt Radio, religious radio. That's not quite right, on AM 950.